The Allen Lund Company continues to support the owner-operators of OOIDA. Thank you for what you do, and stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The Trump administration's tariff plans hit a snag this week when a court struck them down temporarily, but one day later, another court reinstated them. Scott Thompson discusses the effect of all that on the trucking industry with Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. One woman's interest in coffee led her to get into the trucking industry. Ashley Blackford speaks with OOIDA member Natasha Cruz Sanchez. And finally, Marty Ellis says we used to share the road, and now we fight on the road. Many will recall that road rage was not a topic back in the day, but Marty says it certainly is now. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. You can't swing a dead cat these days without running into talk about tariffs. They're on, they're off. A court strikes them down, then another brings them back. We're going to delve into the latest here and what it could all mean for the trucking industry with Tyson Fisher. Tyson is associate editor of Landline Magazine, and he joins us in the studio right now. Tyson, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's start with the court battle this week that has kind of been taking us back and forth here. One day we had a court stripping down President Trump's powers to institute tariffs. One day later, there was another court that said, hang on a second, where are we right now with regard to all the tariffs that are floating around?
All right, so here's the big takeaway, all right? All the tariffs that were in place are still in place right now. Okay, so if you don't remember anything else that we say, just know that the tariffs that we had a week ago or just several days ago are still here.
All right, well, we're done.
That's it. So let's go.
We'll move on.
Let's go to commercial.
No, okay, let's go a little deeper.
So let's go back to where this originated from. So on Wednesday, May 28th, the Court of International Trade basically ruled in favor of plaintiffs of the lawsuit against Trump's tariffs, basically saying that the law that Trump invoked to install these tariffs was used unlawfully. So basically struck down certain tariffs, not all of the tariffs that he put in place to use this law, but some of them did, namely the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and the 20% tariffs on China, the universal 10% tariffs, and the reciprocal tariffs. All of those fall into the purview of this lawsuit. So that was Wednesday. Court said you can't do that. And then on Thursday, May 29th, Court of Appeals basically said...
Hold my beer.
Basically, right. And they said we're going to put that on hold, that ruling on hold, until the Trump administration appeals. So basically, Trump can continue to impose these tariffs while the Trump administration appeals that Court of International Trade ruling.
And this thing is probably almost certainly going up to the Supreme Court, I think.
I would bet the house on that for sure.
In pretty short order, too. So we'll have more details on that. But again, your takeaway is that what was true on Tuesday in terms of tariffs remains true today. Those that were in place on that day remain in place right now until we see some action there in the court process. I'm interested in this, and I've been interested in this since all the tariff talk started up a few months ago, just about what the effect is going to be, of course, on the economy, but on the trucking industry in particular. I know you've spoken with a couple of industry experts about this issue. I've spoken with a few, too, before, but this week you spoke with them in light of the latest rulings here. I'm kind of curious what their takeaway is from what's happening right there, and again, with the idea of what effect it's going to have on the trucking industry.
Yeah, so I reached out to Hamish Woodrow. He's the Director of Strategic Analytics at Motive, and I also reached out to Avery Vise. He's a Vice President of Trucking at Freight Transportation Research Associates. Brilliant guys when it comes to, getting the pulse of the economy as it relates to freight. And they both said pretty much similar statements, which is this isn't going to change much as far as trucking freight is concerned, or even the economy. So the reason why is because of all of the tariffs that were already in place. And so essentially the big tariffs went into effect on in early April. And all the businesses knew that that was going to happen. So what they did was they front-loaded all their inventory and materials and supplies, all the imports they needed to bring in. We saw a surge in like cross-border trucking, for example, in February and March, and in anticipation of those April tariffs. And so what that means is all these companies have a full warehouse of front-loading all that inventory. And so even if these tariffs, if this court ruling were to be upheld and these tariffs are kind of lifted, it doesn't really matter because they already have a full warehouse. They've already front-loaded. It's not going to make a big difference. And now a couple companies might front-load a little bit more, but for the most part, companies have already adjusted to this volatile, economic situation that we have so far because of these tariffs going off and on. So that's kind of the big takeaway. So where are we at with freight? Pretty much the same place. That doesn't change much of anything. And the other thing I'll mention real quick is that Avery Weiss, he pointed out that. If this court ruling were the last word on the issue, we might see significant movement. But as we all know, as we just pointed out, that certainly isn't the case. We're probably going to have to wait for a Supreme Court ruling. And even then, for the Trump administration has other mechanisms by which they can move forward with these tariffs. So even after a Supreme Court ruling, for example, we can still see these tariffs move forward.
Yeah, and just from speaking with people I've spoken with, essentially what they say is the issue or the underlying issue that kind of affects everything is the uncertainty about, are the tariffs on? Are they off? Which countries are being affected, which are not? So again, I think until we get some of that uncertainty cleared up, and this court process may help with some of that, we're going to continue to see that uncertainty affect certain markets. Regarding that too, you mentioned the president does have options, I suppose, if, his tariff authority is sort of stricken down by the Supreme Court or another court. He does have other options when it comes to tariffs and economic policy, right?
Yeah, there are several. I mean, it's worth noting that Congress has the power to install these tariffs or any tariffs, generally speaking. Now, there's some different laws where you can use emergency purposes, which is the center of this lawsuit. Not going to get too deep in the weeds there. So, yeah, but there are other ways the president can kind of temporarily bypass Congress to install some quick tariffs, one of which is Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. That would allow Trump to install up to a 15% tariff for up to 150 days on countries in which the U.S. has a large trade deficit. And so that could be used with that 10%. Universal tariffs and stuff like that. There are some other things that are a little bit longer of a process. It would require a public comment period, but there are ways that this can be done. It would just take longer and under more scrutiny, but it can be done. And so if this ruling is upheld, I would expect that to happen. But that key word you said there is uncertainty. Yeah. That's not going away. And as long as uncertainty doesn't go away, shippers and receivers are going to be in what I would call a holding pattern. Yeah,
state of flux for sure. Yeah, and I do know the president's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, told reporters at the White House, I think on Thursday, that they were not going to abandon this pursuit here.
So no way.
We will continue to see this. Tyson's got a piece about this very issue that goes into more detail. You can find that over on our website, landline.media, so go check it out. Tyson, we appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. We're seeing more and more instances where people are trying to stage crashes in order to sue the trucker, the carrier, and their insurance company to get some cash. Now, Congress has a plan to help stop the problem. The Staged Accident Fraud Prevention Act, or H.R. 2662. Call to support the bill today at 202-224-3121 or by going to the website fightingfortruckers.com. Next, Ashley Blackford talks with a woman whose love for coffee led her to a career in trucking. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
Landline Now, welcome back. From a love of coffee to a love of life on the road, Natasha Cruz Sanchez has had a fascinating career. Landline Magazine's Erin Wisdom Watson recently spoke with the OOIDA member about her journey into the trucking industry.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico, and I'm originally from Caguas. At that time, I just graduated college, and I tried to find a job, but of course, it was very hard to find a job when the whole island has been destroyed, and I felt the responsibility to help my family out. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go out. So I came to the United States. I didn't have any family members in Washington, D.C. is where I went to. I stayed in Maryland, worked in Washington, D.C. I came only with $500 and good luck. And I was terrified. I'm not going to lie. I was terrified. And my education is in nursing, so I did work as a nurse for a little bit. But my passion is in coffee. That's really where my heart is at. And when I started working in coffee, I really fell in love with the industry to the point that I wanted to learn even more. So after working in a specialty coffee shop in Washington, D.C. for a year, I decided to go to Italy. Mm-hmm. And that's an experience that really opened my mind, my eyes, my heart, everything. And I wanted to keep learning. So when I came back to US, there was a coffee event. And because I was like new to the industry, I was a little shy. I didn't know if I should go to this like coffee competition. And it was my first local one. And I won. And I was like, this is so weird, but okay. So the next month, there was another coffee event, and they posted my picture on the social media. And one of the people that were there recognized me, and he approached me and he said, "You're Natasha?" And I was like, yes. And he was like, "Hey, I see you on social media. Would you like to come over for a coffee class that I'm going to give?" And I was like, let's do it. So that warehouse was in Rockville, Maryland. So I decided to go to a coffee class, and I loved it. And it's a huge roastery, and they had trucks coming in. And I was like, okay, this business is huge. So at that time, he needed to go for a coffee competition. He's my mentor. He's my friend, he's a coffee roaster, and he was going to compete in that year. And he asked me if I wanted to cover him for 2 days. And from working 2 days, I ended up working in that company for 2 years, which is awesome. And working at that company, I was able to learn everything related to the whole coffee supply chain. So, I learned first coffee, the most important part I will say is taking care of the soil. So taking care of the coffee farm. So they sent me to Guatemala. And it was my first time going to other place to a coffee farm other than one in Puerto Rico. So I went to Guatemala. I saw all the process from the coffee before it gets exported to the United States. And there's a lot of a lot of things involved. But then when it gets to the United States, it's a whole different process. And that's where trucking comes in place. And I think nobody that I met before has really sit down to think about the role of trucking in coffee. And at that time, I didn't even know until I started observing how everything works. And I remember, and I have this experience to my heart, I received a truck driver. He was so tired. And again, I was ignorant at that time. I didn't know how hard we work, as I include me now in this field. Mm-hmm. And he asked me who could use the restroom. And I said, yeah. And to me, that question was sad, because it's a basic thing, human thing to do. A real quick parenthesis. Now I understand why he asked, because when I became a driver, a lot of people don't let me use their restrooms. And I was like, that's crazy. We hit the road for hours and hours. Sometimes we can stop. So, I didn't understand what I did for him at that time, how meaningful it was until I became a trucker. So I was like, yeah, sure, use the restroom. And then when he used the restroom, I was making him coffee. And I got a coffee bag, I got a t-shirt, I got a mug, I got a box. I put a lot of goodies and I gave him a tour of the facility. And he needed to wait a little bit for being loaded. And at that time, I didn't know the frustration that a trucker goes through when they have to wait for being loaded, especially when they're tired. And the truth is, when you're getting loaded, you feel it in the truck unless you disconnect. So anyways, I took care of him. I gave him a tour, all these things, and he was so grateful. But again, I didn't understand why he was so grateful at that time. And I used to be the person that will receive truckers in that warehouse, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, come back, and I didn't know. So it was a pretty cool experience. But then the pandemic started, and primarily my job was to go to different Costco's on the East Coast, Northeast, the United States. So I was never used to be in the same place all the time. And that's when I really started learning more about the whole process, about everything. And at that time we had a driver. It was a box truck, so you don't need a CDL for a box truck. And I told him, what if we get our CDLs? And he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, I mean, yes, because I really like to see another women in these trucks, because I used to be the one receiving them. I never saw any female drivers. And I personally believe that you need to be the change that you want to see. It's very easy to say, I want this to happen, but are you really to roll your sleeves and get the hands dirty and get into that? So I decided to take on that. But at that time I was married and I was going through a divorce, so I couldn't do it. And at that time I also had to go back home for medical issues. So I was like, you know what, right now is not the time. And I don't think it's correct to force things. I think everything comes whenever you're ready. So I did that. So I decided to go back home, but I still had that thing inside my heart that I wanted to be a driver. So going back home, I also met the coffee farmers that I currently work with. So I went back home with a lot of coffee magazines from all these events I was already going in the United States. And I found these women and I was like, you know what? I would love to work with them one day. And I even had the name of the company at that time. I had like the little logo, but I didn't have quite sure what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew I wanted to have a coffee business someday. So being in Puerto Rico, had my surgery, I came back to the United States and I didn't want to go back to Maryland because first, it's too cold, and I don't do well with the cold. I love Arizona. A lot of people are like, you're crazy. It's too hot. I love it. And I wanted to try something new. So I decided to come here. My friend will say, well, come here, try it out. I tried to work in different coffee businesses. But most of the positions that they were offering me were working as a barista. And in order to advance in my career, I knew I couldn't be working just behind the bar. I needed to do something else because I was doing quality control, because I was understanding the supply chain. I was going to the farmers. I was doing other things that complement the whole aspect of the coffee supply chain. And I wanted to be a truck driver. So I was like, you know what? This is my time. This is my sign to be a truck driver. So I went to different schools and they told me about a grant. And I don't know if many people know about it, but as the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is a grant that most of states have it, and they pay for your school. So it took around 4 to 5 months to get the whole process put in place, and they paid for my school. So I got to trucking school. It was only 3 women in my class of like 30-something men, and it can be intimidating, right? And I feel like my advice to women when they ask me, hey, how you did it, is like, you got to work on yourself. You got to be confident. You got to believe that you can do it, because some people will try to take you down. And if you let that get into you, it can either like make you even quit from trucking school. So I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to get done. So it was challenging, but it was good. I finished trucking school. I got my first job. I started in a mega carrier, and it was a class of 20, but 19 were men. So I find the same, challenge again of being the only woman. I was like, you know what? It's okay. I got this. And when I started going over the road and I tasted coffee, I was like, oh, Lord, what? The coffee was bad. The coffee simply was bad. And I was thinking to myself, truck drivers move United States. Without drivers, there's nothing. No goods, no food, no nothing. How come the only time you have to feel normal and to feel human again and to reconnect and to, get up, it is a bad cup of coffee, and everything clicked. That's why the first bag that I have is called Over the Road. It's because I started working over the road. Most drivers start working over the road, and it's a cup of coffee that is so good and so sweet that you can drink it more than once. I feel like coffee should not be just to wake up. That was something in the past. When you go through the coffee history, we have 3 different waves. And one of the first waves is basically people drinking coffee just to wake up. The second wave is people experimenting with sweet, like caramel and chocolate and all these flavors. And the third wave is specialty coffee. That's what I do, which means it's a coffee that's higher quality. And I believe that people should enjoy that coffee just because it tastes good other than to just wake up. Another thing I noticed with drivers was the coffee was very bitter. So you're driving, you drink your coffee, and then you get a heartburn. And I felt that myself because might run out of my coffee. So I was like, I don't want to feel this way. So I had planned to do this year during summer, but that's when the injury happened. I was getting ready to go to work. I was moving stuff around in my house. Honestly, I will tell everybody, learn how to move boxes and be careful, because that's the only thing that took me was a box to misplace my foot in the wrong way, and my knee got twisted and I tore my ACL. All my savings were gone during that time. So it was very frustrating because I saved money to start my business and I had to prioritize my health because I had to, And I thought about not moving forward with it. I was like, this is it. I can't do it. It makes no sense. I can walk. I can work. I need to get surgery. I don't know how long it's going to take. Since the injury has been now 6 months, I still cannot walk properly. But my friends, I had great friends. They were like, no, Natasha, you're not going to quit. You're going to do it. My friends got me the coffee roaster. My friends helped me financially to be able to have the funds to purchase the equipment that I needed. And I've been able to roast at home. And I have to do it sitting down. That's the only way, And I'm happy that I have that support system. And I can say that during this time to anybody, but especially a driver, that we depend 100% on our bodies to do our job. You have to save money. I was able to save 30% of my salary when I became a driver. And saving that 30% is what has allowed me to survive 6 months without working. I'm not getting any Social Security, any disability. I was a 1099, worker, so I don't have any benefits like that. And I feel like that's very important and something that everybody needs to consider, have a plan B. So I don't want to say that thanks to the injury, this is possible, but before I didn't have time. Now I have the time, and I decided to use this time wisely because frustration got into me. And I'm not going to say that I never got frustrated or depressed. I got in a really bad depression. I don't have family members here with me. I had to push through it with only 2 friends here in the state of Arizona, and it's hard. So this is my story. This is everything I've been going through. I've been working in coffee for over 5 years, and I don't think I have to decide if I want coffee or trucking because they both complement very well.
You're listening to Natasha Cruz Sanchez talking about her journey into the trucking industry. We've got to take a short break, but we'll be back with more from her after this.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a cat scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when your truck on a cat scale.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Welcome back. You're listening to an interview done by Landline Magazine's Aaron Wisdom Watson, who spoke with OOIDA member Natasha Cruz Sanchez about her journey into the trucking industry.
I think what I found most interesting about your story is that you do have these dual passions. And just to step back a little bit, when you first decided you wanted to go into trucking, were you thinking that you had to choose? Were you thinking, okay, I love coffee, but I'm going to set that aside and, just do this new thing?
The reason to go to trucking, honestly, it was just to see if I could do it. Because when I worked in the warehouse, I will receive all these truckers, but I never received women. And I was like, that's interesting. And then research shows that only 12% of women, that truck drivers are women in the United States. And I was like, I want to be part of that 12%. But then when I came to Arizona and tried to get into coffee, and I noticed how the coffee scenery was here, I was like, maybe this is my time to do the trucking. And then I believe that if it wasn't for trucking, my business would not have any sense. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have any purpose. And I believe that nobody needs to choose between one or the other. If you can think in a good, creative way to mix them both, that's beautiful. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you've definitely done that. And as far as your trucking career, I believe you said you started, was it June of 2023 or March 2023?
Yeah, I'm still a baby in the industry. It started last year.
And what exactly were you doing when you were driving?
Sure. So I started with Schneider. That was my first trucking job. And then one of my classmates from trucking school, she was working in another company. It's a smaller fleet of like 30 trucks or so. And she was like, hey, you want to come over here? You will have more home time. And I was like, sure, because I already had the idea to have the business. So being at home more time will be good for me. So I said yes. And we were contractors moving Amazon trailers. So that's what I was doing, moving Amazon trailers.
Mm-hmm. And so was trucking did it turn out to be like you envisioned it would be when you first were thinking, hey, I want to give this a try?
Yes.
Or was there very much that was different?
So I think I'm one of the very few people that I knew what I was getting myself into. One of my very good friends, Nelson, and he's watching this. I say hi to him and I love him with all my heart. Nelson is a truck driver. We come from the same background. I'm a nurse, former nurse. He's also a nurse and we're both truck drivers. He has been driving over 10 years and he loves the road. And he was the one who told me how everything is related to trucking. Like, if this happens, this is what you're gonna, this is how you're gonna resolve it. Don't have this high expectation about this. It won't happen. He was the one who had my eyes open before I got into it. And I think that everybody that would like to be a driver is, in my opinion, is vital to have somebody that works in the industry that can tell you exactly how it is. I'm not gonna tell you that backing up at first was easy. I will be lying. But I can say that it's normal, that is hard, that is normal, that is going to take time. That is normal that you have to understand what truck you're using, the distance of the fifth wheel, or, if you have all your tandems completely to the back or to the front. If you're at some point for a very short time, I drove a flatbed and that's a whole different story. So I think having somebody that can tell you how it is, it will not eliminate, but minimize the frustrations that you may have. So everything that I lived is exactly how he described it to me. And I think that was the best thing that could happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that was really helpful. Mm-hmm. And so were you driving mainly regionally or were you going like all over?
So I started over the road. And then when I moved into Amazon, my company will have us do over the road. But then the owner decided that he wanted to have everybody doing solo. So I switched to regional. So I will just stay on the West Coast mostly. But whenever he will find a good opportunity to go over the road, then I will go over the road. So I will say over the road and regional kind of
Gotcha.
thing.
And I know you said you're really looking forward to getting back to it when you can, but obviously you have your business that's keeping you busy now. Do you envision being able to balance both pretty easily, or what do you think that'll be like when you?
So I already thought about it. Mm-hmm. I think that for me, going back is very important. That's my primary source of income, and trying to have a business without, funding is very hard. So I definitely want to go back. I have some coffee people, just to put a name, that they have a bigger roaster than I do. And I already had conversations with them. And whenever I need to process that big order, I can always go roast the orders, package everything, and send it out. But I do have somebody here that if I need to hire them to process the orders, I can do that. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to. Once I get back in the truck, I will need to have somebody that can be here, that I can trust, and that can provide the same, the same way I package an order, I'm expecting that or better. So that's going to happen, hopefully sooner than later.
And for people like me who don't necessarily know a lot about coffee, what exactly is going into creating the blend that you make?
So I don't have a blend for right now. So this coffee, it's a single origin. This coffee is from Mexico. It's from Tenango de Doria. And I'm hoping eventually when, little by little, I want to first educate people about what coffee is. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know coffee is a fruit and grows in tropical areas. It's not grown in the United States, only Hawaii, but because Hawaii is a different island. So I'm hoping to educate people little by little. And that has been amazing because a lot of people tell me, oh, maybe that's why that coffee was so bitter, is because I was drinking a different coffee species. I only work with Arabica coffee beans at the moment, and that bean is more delicate. It needs shade, it needs nutrients, it needs more care. It takes a long time for these cherries to pop up. So basically what we drink is the seed of the cherry. So I'm hoping to educate people to understand what's behind of it. And so far, I had truck drivers try my coffee and they were confused. They will look at the coffee and look at me and be like, why this coffee is so sweet? And I'm like, well, because it was properly worked at a farm level. So I'm very happy to be working with a women's group. They're called Las Adelitas. And that's all they do. They process amazing coffees. I know them for the last 3 years. And what is beautiful about working with them is at the time I was going to have, September is the month of surgeries for me. So 3 years ago during September, I had a surgery. And even though I didn't have necessarily any business idea or plan, whatever, I knew I wanted to work with them. And they said yes. 3 years later, I reached out. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to buy that coffee. And they were like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to buy that coffee. So I think educating people little by little how the supply chain is and how it looks like, and how also we are part of that, because the coffee doesn't come here walking. We need truckers that can move that product to the United States. And that mix of supply chain, trucking, coffee, I just love it.
If you could kind of elaborate on how that connection between coffee makers and truck drivers, how that plays out in your business or in your market.
Okay. So the business I worked out in Maryland, I will always be very grateful to them, because I think if it wasn't for that company, I wouldn't have half of the knowledge that I have of the industry right now. And the mission of that company is to make business directly with the coffee farmers. Why? Because there's a lot of people in between. You have importers, exporters, you have, people from the stock market deciding on coffee prices. So that's called the C market. So if you think about spot market for trucking, we have the C market for coffee. So a frustration that I see in trucking is drivers saying, well, brokers don't want to pay what my, operational cost might be. And coffee is exactly the same. Some importers don't want to pay coffee farmers the cost of production of their coffee. So when I see those problems from different industries, but very similar, I said to myself, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of feeling like somebody's not being valued along the supply chain. And for that reason, I was like, okay, you know what? First, I do believe that drivers deserve better everything, period. better truck stops, safe parking. I mean, you work in landline, you know the truck parking crisis. We deserve good food, good coffee, all these good things. However, the people that provide these services had never drove a truck before. And talking about coffee, you have a lot of people having coffee businesses, having amazing coffee shops, coffee roasteries, but they never picked up a coffee cherry. And I have. I fell down a hill in a coffee farm. I got the fire ants all, in my face. It took me 3 hours to only being able to pick up 10 pounds of coffee that turned out to be completely dried out. They look like this. This is called green coffee. It's raw coffee. 10 pounds of cherries into 3 pounds of green coffee. So you see there's a lot of time and hands involved. And I was like, you know what? If I want to see something different, I need to make it different. If I want better coffee for drivers, then I have to make sure that I'm working with farms that are doing the great thing that they can in their farms and don't negotiate the prices, because I already know how it feels to be working in a farm. Whatever I pay them is something that makes me feel good because I'm contributing to them having a livelihood out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with drivers. When you pay a driver very little for whatever job whatever they're hauling, you got to think, can they live off that? And if the answer is no, then we need to do something different. That's why the mission of Na Cruzan is to honor the work of those who grow coffee and those who move the world, coffee farmers and truck drivers.
And so do you have any specific plans for the business going forward? Obviously, you have the one product that you sell now. Are you planning to expand
Yes.
the line of what you're selling?
So as of right now, yes. I started out with the over the road. Now I have it available in 2-pound bags because a lot of people were like, the coffee's so good. I ran out of it fast. So I was like, okay, let me have a bigger size. I'm also working on something. It's like a little filter that you put on top of the mug. The only thing you need to do is add hot water. And that's amazing for people like us that are truck drivers because we don't want to deal with the mess. I myself tried the French press in the truck, a mess. Don't recommend. So I'm thinking about ways of having good coffee that you can make in 30 minutes or less if you are taking your 30-minute break in the truck. So there's that. I'm waiting for the harvest time in a farm in Puerto Rico because I am from Puerto Rico. Of course, I want to have coffee from my country, but because Puerto Rico is a small island, we don't produce so much. So I'm waiting for harvest season to come and see if I can have the coffee how I have envisioned it. And I'm also currently working on having merch. It's going to be pretty cool. I cannot say details right now, but it's going to be super cool and super different. And one of the other goals I have other than selling online is going to be able to have wholesale accounts. So I'm like putting myself out there. It's hard because I can't walk fully. I look like a little penguin walking and I have a lot of pain. So whenever I have the energy and the strength to go out to a truck stop or a trucking related business, I go show coffee samples and start the process of like putting myself out there. So those are the plans for now.
That was Natasha Cruz Sanchez speaking with Landline Magazine's Aaron Wisdom Watson. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Protect your diesel engine with Howe's Diesel Defender. Restore vital lubricity, eliminate injector deposits, and boost fuel economy by 5% or more. Power, performance, protection, all in one. Howe's Diesel Defender, available now.
With rising costs affecting everyone, switching to a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper can help you avoid expensive repairs and downtime. Save money and keep your truck running smooth with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Over the years, our highways have become more and more dangerous, and I'm not talking about traffic statistics here. I'm referring to, as Marty puts it, how we used to share the road, and now we fight on the road. Many will recall that back in the day, road rage was not a thing, but Marty says it certainly is now.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Marty, how you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
Doing great. Thank you very much. We got a lot going on here in terms of issues, so I'm going to dive right into it. And your first one here is one that I am very concerned about, because you just said people used to share the road and now they fight on the road. I do not remember in my youth so many years ago when they used the stone tablets to communicate and semaphore, that I don't remember road rage.
Right.
I don't remember that. That seems to be a very modern phenomena. But what are you seeing or hearing from people about?
Yeah, and this is, not only what I see out there, but our members when they come in and talk to me. It just seems like everybody has gotten more aggressive.
Yeah.
And not just on the road, but just everywhere. And I know there was an era, and I can't remember what years it was, that were talking about the me generation. And there's so much, I guess it's thinking, okay, this is all about me, and it's very selfish driving is what one of our members brought up. It's, being very selfish when you drive. And then the same thing with the fighting because I didn't come up with that, he did. And so this is why I really do appreciate our members coming in and talking to me. And because some of the time you get a little bit different perspective on what's going on. And I think that they're right. I think that there's so much selfishness that, hey, you're in my way, okay, get out of my way. I don't care, what you're doing. It's all about me. And what I try to get people to understand is just because that you want to speed, okay, does not mean that I need to participate. So if I'm overtaking a car, passing a car, okay,
yep,
and you're coming up behind me, that still doesn't mean that I'm in the wrong, okay? I'm going to get around this vehicle, but I don't have to do it at your rate of speed. So understand, I'm not camping in a passing lane or anything. And I think so many drivers don't understand that. If they're still passing the person, okay, they're not in the wrong. Okay, they may not be passing it at the speed that you want to go. But as I say, I don't have to participate at your speed level. As long as I'm doing it correctly, I get out, I don't try to mess around, but we all know some of the time when you're passing somebody, some of the time the reason they slowed down is because their mind went off somewhere else and didn't realize how slow they were going, and then they'll speed up. And then, of course, others are just jerks and want to hold you out there, and so they speed up a little bit, which I've never understood. And I think everybody needs to take a look at what we are doing. And some of us have friends that drive aggressively, and I think a good friend is willing to let another friend, a good friend, know what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the time you have to say, "Hey, whoa, hold it." I have a couple friends like that are willing to say that. They know that it's not going to hurt my feelings. I have Jerry Seaman, one of our life members. He is what I call my true north. If I'm wondering if I'm thinking correctly, I call him up and say, "Hey, Jerry, this is what I'm thinking on this." Okay. And I'm really, really hoping that he's going to say, "Marty, you're right. You're thinking just right." Okay.
Don't we all want to hear that?
Exactly. But I know that he's friend enough to tell me, "Marty, here's how you need to sit back, take a step back, and let's go over these, He'll explain to me what his thought processes are. And so many times, once I take a step back and after talking to him, I'm able to say, you know what? I was thinking wrong. And I think with driving especially, people's lives are at stake here.
Yeah.
This is not you and I having a discussion on, the price of tea in China. Okay?
Yep.
This is lives are at stake. And we have, each one of us, car drivers, motorcycles, truck drivers, we all have to remember that lives are at stake. And one mistake can cost somebody that life. And do we want to have to, at the end of the day, say, gosh, if I would have just slowed down just a little bit, maybe that person would still be alive. One of our board members the other day said, that we save lives every day as truck drivers. And I still believe that that's our job, is to sometimes make up for other people's mistakes.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I love truck drivers. You did bring up one of my pet peeves, Marty, which is I'm in the passing lane and I'm passing, back off.
Right.
But I have a couple of others. And one of them is this person who thinks they can tailgate a vehicle and make them go faster. Well, when they do it to a full-size semi, they can't see you back there in your Yugo or whatever, that diminutive little thing, your Fiat maybe, I don't know,
Right.
smart car. They can't see you. You're not intimidating anyone. In fact, in that car, you can't.
Right.
It's impossible. But the other one is when you're following a car. So you are limited to whatever they can do, and then the person behind you tailgates you. Like, I cannot pass through this vehicle in front of me.
Right.
I am stuck at the speed they are going. What do you think is going to happen here?
Right.
But I see people engage in these things every single day.
Absolutely.
And it's just maddening sometimes to watch. And I do think that's one of the things I loved about the driver's education I got as a kid in high school.
Yep.
Because that's one of the things they said is, remember that you're in a 1-ton murder machine. And if you don't operate this correctly, it will do exactly that.
And that's true. And I try not to talk about the 80,000 pound, some people say, missile or whatever. I try not, because it's just a tool.
Right.
Okay? Our trucks are just tools, and we have to understand. And I think it gives it a bad connotation when people say it's an 80,000 pound missile or whatever. And I'm not trying to get on you on that. I was just, that kind of triggered me. Okay.
Okay.
So I apologize.
It's okay. But
I think that we all have to understand all these trucks are tools. Okay,
yes.
Because we don't want to put it on our back. But we have to understand with that we have more of a responsibility because we have all this weight behind us. We all know how long it takes to stop that thing. Yeah. And too many guys are still doing that aggressive driving and are tailgating cars. I know they make you mad. They cut you off. I get it. But don't do that.
Yeah. I do have to say that this was a driving ed instructor talking to high school sophomores in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So not talking to professional truckers, but there it is. We're out of time, Marty. I always enjoy talking with you, but any last words before you head out?
Hey, just be kind to one another and give that driver next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.